Hello and welcome to today's webinar, MISO's 2024 Capacity Auction Results, Insights and Analysis. My name is Tyann Herrer and I'm moderating today's webinar where we'll share our key takeaways from MISO's Planning Resources Auction, also known as PRA, and what these results mean for your company going forward. These results were released in April, but given the interest we continue to receive around this topic, we are presenting this webinar today to provide a deeper dive into what's going on in MISO and address common questions we've received so you can better understand what the future of demand response in MISO looks like. In addition, there have been some recent developments in the market that we may want to discuss and share with you. I would like to introduce our two speakers today. First, we have Pete Holzaepfel, Senior Director of Utility Business Development here at Enel North America. In this role, he designs and implements solutions with utilities throughout North America, works across all Enel products, including demand response and energy storage. And Pete has more than a decade of experience working in the clean energy industry. Pete is joined today by Bob Kraynak, Senior Program Manager, Western Energy Markets here at Enel North America. In his role, Bob manages 100 megawatts plus of demand response programs in service of utility partnerships and through wholesale market participation. He has 9 years of experience in the clean energy industry, and he is a former Navy bomb disposal officer. Here is what Pete and Bob will be sharing with you in our webinar today. First, we'll review what the PRA is. We'll go through our analysis of the results and the factors that contributed to them. Then we'll provide our projections for the future and some recent developments. We'll cover how, based on this analysis and our projections, what key steps you can take to move forward. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. If you have questions along the way, please pop them into the chat. And now let's get started. Pete, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be sharing insights with you on today's webinar. And before we begin, I want to provide a quick intro to Enel for anyone listening who may not be familiar with us. Enel North America combines the spirit of a startup with the infrastructure and expertise of a global innovator. Our parent company, the Enel Group, is a multinational power company and leading player in the world's power markets. As a Fortune 100 energy leader with the world's largest demand response portfolio, the Enel Group lends its scale, expertise, and financial stability to customers in North America. Enel enables businesses and communities to manage energy more efficiently and strategically. And sustainability has been at the center of our business model and our way of working for years. Enel has pledged to be zero carbon by 2040 with $190 billion of investment in that commitment to date. Enel is the world's largest private player in renewables with 11.4 gigawatts of renewable capacity in North America and 61 gigawatts globally. As I mentioned, Enel is a world leader in demand response with 4.9 gigawatts of DR capacity here in North America and 9.6 gigawatts globally. And we manage a large portfolio of DR resources representing more than 9,000 customer sites enrolled in North America DR markets with Enel. Enel has a significant footprint in MISO. We've been working with C&I demand response customers in MISO since 2015. And overall, we have more than 18 years of experience providing demand response services in US markets. So just some quick facts about MISO and the region. 45 million customers are served within the MISO region. The system includes 75,000 miles of transmission lines and nearly 3,000 generating units. MISO has a peak demand of roughly 120 gigawatts, making it the second largest RTO in the US after PJM. So now let's get to why you're here today, the PRA. So what's the PRA? MISO has the responsibility of delivering reliable power to 45 million energy users. You can see in this map that MISO has a very extensive footprint covering 15 US states. Within each of the zones are the local balancing authorities, who are local utilities who work with MISO to manage the grid at a local level. For example, Ameren in Illinois or Missouri, or Consumers Energy in Michigan. MISO relies on their seasonal capacity framework to ensure sufficient resources for each zone during each season of the delivery year. The PRA also determines prices for load modifying resources, like demand response. It's important to note that the PRA doesn't drive capacity planning decisions like other capacity auctions do. The PRA is a residual auction, where only a small amount of capacity actually changes hands, compared to a capacity auction like in PJM, where nearly all of the capacity in the market actually changes hands in the auction. MISO is comprised largely of vertically integrated and regulated utilities. It's between these utilities and their state regulators that long-term capacity planning decisions in MISO are being made. That planning aims to avoid any shortages, and that's why capacity prices are typically very low, but there are fleeting exceptions. Okay, so let's talk about what happened in the 2024-25 PRA. MISO released the results of the PRA for the 2024-25 delivery year on April 25th. These results shed light on the dynamic state of the energy landscape in the region, how volatile this landscape can be, and how the results can change drastically with each delivery year. As Tyann mentioned at the start of the presentation, these results have been published for 3 months now, but they continue to be a hot topic given how the results panned out. Here's why. This year's auction resulted in uniformly low pricing across most zones. Zone 5, Missouri, was an exception. Pricing in this zone spiked significantly for the fall and spring seasons. In the fall, the auction cleared at roughly $65,500 a megawatt season. In the spring, the auction cleared at roughly $66,000 a megawatt season. In the 2023-24 delivery year, the auction cleared at just over $1,000 a megawatt season in the fall and just under $1,000 a megawatt season in the spring. So this is a massive jump in pricing for this delivery year. While Zone 5 did see the greatest pricing difference between this year's PRA and last year's, there were some changes in other zones as well. In all zones except Zone 9, capacity prices in the winter fell from roughly $200 a megawatt season to roughly $70 a megawatt season. In Zone 9, capacity prices in the winter fell from roughly $2,000 a megawatt season to roughly $70 a megawatt season. In all zones, capacity prices for the summer roughly tripled to nearly $3,000 a megawatt season. In all zones except Zone 5, capacity prices for the spring season roughly tripled to $3,000 a megawatt season. It's important to understand that while pricing may look one way one year, it could look completely different the next, as demonstrated in the 2024-25 PRA results. A variety of factors can contribute to capacity surpluses and shortfalls. And while we've noted the volatility in prices, I'd be remiss not to point out that even with the volatility, prices have typically been very low. Let's dive into what happened in Zone 5. The root cause of these fluctuations lies in capacity surpluses and shortfalls relative to planning requirements that ensure grid reliability. While most zones have sufficient capacity, Missouri was facing a capacity deficit of 872 megawatts in the fall and 197 megawatts in the spring season. This capacity deficit is due to factors like power plant retirements, planned power plant maintenance, higher electric demand, and tighter limits on imports. It's also worth noting that because of higher demand and lower capacity imports, the local clearing requirement drastically increased. You can see how these factors all came together in the diagram to the right for the fall season, where the end result was an 872 megawatt deficit. So why the seasonal variation? Fall and spring have capacity deficits, but winter and summer are okay. A few reasons. In the winter, there is a lower local clearing requirement, which is driven by factors like lower demand and a higher import limit, as shown on the previous slide. In the fall and spring, there is a higher local clearing requirement driven by higher demand and a lower import limit that we discussed on the last slide. And that combined with plant retirements and maintenance results in inadequate capacity to meet the local clearing requirement. And you can see visually how this all comes together season by season in the diagram. Now, reason 2 for the pricing increase in Zone 5, the mechanics of the PRA. The auction uses a nearly vertical demand curve, meaning there is very little value ascribed to any capacity surplus relative to the requirement, and any capacity deficit pushes pricing quickly to the cap. A more typical demand curve slopes downward from left to right. It expresses an inverse relationship between price and demand. However, with a vertical demand curve, pricing is set close to zero when the market has sufficient capacity, and it spikes with any shortage. Pricing is divorced from the marginal value of capacity. So given what we've discussed, what can we expect in next year's auction? Given the mechanics of the PRA that we discussed, the vertical demand curve yields a boom and bust pricing environment. Our team analyzed PRA pricing for the past 6 years in Zone 5, Missouri, Zone 6, Michigan, and Zone 4, Illinois. You can see that pricing has been historically volatile, usually clearing close to the price floor and occasionally clearing at the price ceiling. If MISO continues with utilizing the vertical demand curve, we could expect Zone 5 prices to be near the floor next year, given how pricing has cleared in the past. However, it's likely that things are changing. In late June, FERC approved MISO changing from a vertical demand curve to a more typical downward sloping demand curve to determine and set future prices in the PRA. Similar slope curves are used in PJM, NISO, and ISO New England capacity markets. This move would more accurately signal when MISO needs more capacity and will more accurately reflect the reliability value of capacity. Downward sloping demand capacity curves can support resource adequacy more effectively. Slope demand curves produce more meaningful price signals that recognize the reliability value of additional capacity above the target. It would also produce more efficient and stable capacity prices. And there will be more nuanced pricing of shortages. FERC said in its ruling that this move will reduce volatility in auction clearing prices, increase the stability of the capacity revenue stream over time, and render capacity investments less risky, thereby encouraging greater investment and at a lower financing cost. Now I'm going to hand it over to Bob to discuss how these results and projections can inform your decision-making process.
Thanks, Pete. Really nice coverage of the MISO PRA over the last couple of years. Good information. Thank you. So if you're here, you may be wondering what, given the analysis and projections that Pete discussed, how do you best proceed to see if you are interested in demand response? When is the right timing for this? Do you jump in now, wait, potentially leave money on the table? We're going to review the options you have and some strategies to consider. So if I could hone in on one thing, if not the most important aspect of MISO demand response, is thinking long-term. There's a boom and bust nature to capacity pricing in MISO, as Pete demonstrated. And while that will be somewhat mitigated by the introduction of the slope demand curve, volatility is still inherent to any auction-based system. We view our role with customers as a trusted long-term partner to help navigate the dynamic and sometimes unpredictable nature of energy markets. Next slide, please. The best way to navigate uncertainty and volatility, in our opinion, is through partnerships. A good strategic partner should be looking beyond and not reacting to market prices each year. And your partner should offer you long-term value through market expertise, transparency around opportunities and expectations, and in revenue earnings and stability. Enel North America, for instance, has partnerships with Ameren, Illinois and Ameren, Missouri in the MISO region, and we offer bilateral demand response programs. What that means for you is a long-term partner and stable pricing, and a trusted partner when the energy markets invariably become uncertain because they are dynamic and there is a certain amount of volatility baked into it. Do you want to move to the next slide, please? So in Illinois, Enel has an exclusive bilateral partnership with Ameren Illinois. We provide strong pricing, and if you look at the chart on the right, a customer would have made 2 times the money in the Ameren Illinois Business Demand Response Program than they would have made through the MISO PRA without being exposed to penalties. Enel handles the onboarding and the demand response education for customers because we do understand that it is a niche application within the energy industry. We develop customized energy reduction plans side by side with customers that are tailored to your facility. And at most sites, we install specialized Enel metering equipment to allow for real-time energy monitoring. I think the bottom line, the takeaway here, is to please reach out to us to learn more about the benefits of joining a bilateral demand response program and see today if your facility is qualified to participate and make more than you would in the MISO PRA. Next slide, please. So in Missouri, Enel has an exclusive bilateral partnership with Ameren Missouri. This means that customers in the Ameren Missouri territory are eligible to participate in our bilateral demand response program. And as previously discussed, the bilateral benefits of this program will mirror those of the Ameren Illinois program. Mostly stable pricing and no penalty exposure. Please reach out to us today to discover if your facility is qualified to participate. The benefits of this program of a long-term partner in a bilateral relationship remain. Next slide, please. In Michigan, Enel works behind the scenes with Consumers Energy and DTE Energy as a demand response software provider. Customers in the Michigan Zone 7 territory with greater than 1 megawatt of peak load are eligible to participate in the MISO as a demand response resource managed by the same software trusted by these 2 Michigan utilities. Enel works within bilateral agreements and auctions to ensure strong and dependable capacity pricing year over year. To do this, we secure blocks of capacity in the bilateral market at a set rate. Enel offers and secures better and more consistent pricing for load modifying resources than what the MISO PRA provides. And now, Wisconsin. You may have been hearing a lot of chatter about Wisconsin recently. Here's our best on how to proceed. With new loads coming online, data centers and Bitcoin mining are some prime examples. States are realizing that demand response is essential to support grid stability and the energy transition. A trend we've been seeing across the MISO region is that states are reevaluating their positions on having aggregations of customer loads participate in demand response. The Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, for example, issued an order in 2009 that temporarily prohibited participation in demand response activities by customers of the state's largest utilities. Recently, that ban has been repealed in Wisconsin. And now, while there is no regulatory language enabling demand response, we are standing by. And the key takeaway here is that if you have a facility in Wisconsin and you're interested in participating, please reach out to us so we can hit the ground running once we have clear guidance from the regulating bodies. We can get a lot of the preliminary work done in the meantime. Diane, over to you.
Thanks, Bob. Now I believe it is time for the Q&A portion of our webinar. I know I learned a lot of things about the MISO market, and I hope our listeners did as well. Let me take a look at what we have for questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. So the first question that I see is, can I take things year by year?
Sure, I can take that one. So first, something important to know about MISO is that MISO only allows each site to have a single provider for all of a site's MISO-related DR activity. So what that means is you can't do MISO capacity for a site in one season with one provider and do MISO capacity with another provider for another season. Similarly, you can't do MISO capacity with one provider and then do ancillary services at the same time with another provider. You would have to do all of your MISO-related DR activity with the same provider. And so now this next part will probably seem pretty self-serving, but I think it has a significant amount of legitimacy. So you can do year by year. And if you're thinking about working with another provider, I would definitely recommend considering year over year, because if you're locked in with another provider, you won't have the option to take advantage of some of the options we can provide that they definitely can't, like what Bob was describing related to Ameren, Missouri and Ameren, Illinois. Specifically, we have exclusive partnerships with those MISO utilities that provide strong pricing that is fixed for MISO capacity that no other provider can offer. And these programs are limited in size, so we recommend securing your spot with a longer term contract.
Thanks, Pete. The next question I have is, I have a facility in Wisconsin, so is the market actively enrolling given the recent change in policy?
I can take that one. Given that the legislation barring customer participation was only lifted in May, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what the program structure and requirements are going to look like. Like I said in the previous slide, please reach out to us to start a conversation. Currently, we're waiting regulatory approvals to actually enroll in the market, but that doesn't mean there's all the preparatory work that we can do to get you up and running as a demand response resource in Wisconsin going.
Thanks, Bob. Another question I see is, you only really talked about Illinois, Missouri, Michigan, and Wisconsin. What about the rest of MISO?
Sure, I can take this one again. Many MISO states have had bans or currently have bans on ARCs, which are aggregators of retail customers, or basically third-party providers of demand response, such as Enel North America. Illinois hasn't had a ban. Michigan partially lifted their ban about a year and a half ago. Missouri lifted their ban last year, and obviously Wisconsin just lifted their ban as well. Many of the states that have bans on aggregators have utilities with fairly lucrative DR programs and tariffs that are offered directly by the utility. We consider, I should say, we continue to monitor the regulatory environment in MISO and in each state to ensure that we're in the best place to offer customers access to better options than they currently have.
Great, thanks, Bob. Well, I think that is all the time we have today for Q&A. So if there are any questions in our chat that we were unable to answer, we will reach out to you after the webinar. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and thank you again to Pete and Bob for sharing their expertise with everyone today. We'll be sending all participants a recording of today's webinar along with our responses, like I said previously, to any questions that we didn't have time to answer. Be on the lookout in your inbox for that email, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.